With the news and with the last couple of weeks organizing, optimizing, changing things, obviously for working remotely, I work remote anyway, but there has been a number of changes in the work I do remotely. Also, the redundancies that I put in place for connectivity and just general like improving across the board things that are now a new demand on me. So I've got a few takeaways from that, and also because of like reading research on crazy things like power usage throughout the day and connectivity usage throughout the day now that everybody's working from home. So I wrote a bunch of notes down, and I wrote quite a big long blog piece. So if you want to read the blog piece, if that's easy for you rather than watching a video, do that. But I think working from home for the next 12 months is going to be a common thing for the majority of people who can digitize their work. And I think two major things that are going to come out of that is the requirement for connectivity on a whole nother level compared to just having a DSL like router at home and an internet package from BT. I see massive changes on that front where people are going to actually have to have routers with like a 4G SIM in there for redundancy and failover, because companies that can't expect their remote workers to suddenly have all of that stuff in place or have the right kind of package in place. So I see the virtual worker job actually getting cemented in place in terms of like better equipment, better failover. You got services like Speedify who are optimizing their routing management tools inside of the application specifically for streaming, for like people doing video chats and Zoom chats. So it's interesting to see how platforms and services are adapting to that kind of stuff. Another thing that I've noticed, and I'm sure everybody else has noticed this as well, is about healthcare and food industries. Two main areas that we can all admit have shown cracks, especially healthcare, and just from the sheer unprecedented scale of the amount of people that needed help or ventilators or a very specific need, and a crazy amount of people going into A&E per day with the pandemic's symptoms. But the other area that I found interesting as well was the food area, the food arena, mainly from a perspective of the food distribution networks getting food from overseas to us or getting it into the supermarket, and all the issues involved with having to have a team or a group of people who can be aware of the news that's being released on a daily basis about how to deal with the coronavirus. So there's all of these kind of dominoes that have kind of an effect when something like, I mean, it's unprecedented, right? So like, how do you deal with something that's unprecedented? But I see also opportunities in those areas. I'm sure there's lots of startups being built around healthcare. I mean, we already know like the Fitbits of this world and Apple doing the tracking if you fall over and contacting people. I think there's going to be an even bigger push now for healthcare and tracking and DNA and food and all that kind of stuff. But I also think there's going to be a bunch of food subscription local businesses happen because of this. I think we'd moved away from that model. We'd kind of moved into the supermarket, the weekly shop or the monthly shop, and getting and filling out a larder full of stuff. But as we've seen, there's been an overwhelm in those delivery services. There's people like Tesco's and Asda, and I think Ocado in London, who actually had to shut down their delivery business. It just got too crazy for them. But you got people like Asda who 6 a.m. till 11 p.m. at night, they actually laid on more trucks and delivery trucks, because obviously everybody's isolated, so they can't get anything. They can't go out. Well, they can go out and get it, but most people are either fearful or don't want to do that. And so you've got no booking slots for 2 weeks into the future from today. And that's been the same for like the last 5-6 weeks. So it's exposing areas that, if things were full demand, are falling over. And therefore I see opportunity in those spots for brand new startups. Take like subscription services, right? Like beer in a box. Beer in a box is this like basically a load of bottles put together in a box for like £100. I think it was something like £100, and they send you this everything, snacks, the whole lot. I can see local companies getting on that bandwagon, setting up their own little mini services with a whole delivery component bolted onto the side of it, and make a pretty decent little startup business from the side of that as well. I'm seeing local butchers going and getting flour, because those are demands people are asking a lot when they go into the butchers. Do you have any flour? And so now they're selling flour. So I think it's interesting how a lot of these established businesses who've been around for 20-30 years, who were just hanging on because they'd lost a lot of their walk-in traffic to supermarkets, are now reaping the benefits of that and quickly able to spin up stuff because they've got access to people and resources and no farmers, etc., etc. Other things that I put was, I think remote hiring is going to be completely different. For audience engagement, I think it'll be less about, oh, you have a community of people that are following you. It's going to be more about, what does your Swiss Army knife digital skills look like? So instead of just being trained for a particular job, might be technical support, having all of these additional digital remote services as well. So there's lots to learn there. Can you do live streaming? Can you do a variety of different things remotely? I also put, I think the pandemic really poured gas on adoption of technologies as well, because people were kind of on the fence of like, oh, well, I don't want to be a nerd, or I don't want to be classed as a geek, and I'm not bothered about having the latest and greatest. And yet now we have people who were quite happy to just like mosey on a 9 to 5 doing the commute, are now having to do things remotely, and realizing all the issues that are involved or potentially involved with that, and having to relearn a bunch of things to still deliver their business. Like I said on another video in a couple of days just gone, I'm seeing people who were going to physical locations and training people of a certain age who can't do that anymore. And so there's a whole raft of people out there who are still in their like lower 50s, who are still working really hard before retirement. There's also boomers. The boomer brigade are hiring like crazy remote workers to do work for them that they had people do before, and they've kind of gone off to do all the stuff. And the last three things, connectivity is a human right. I truly believe that having a connection to the internet and having security while you have that connection are going to be massive in the next year. I think we're going to end up having, it makes more sense for us to have a human being who is educated and up to speed, and who has a connection to be able to cross-reference and verify information when it comes to life and death situation. And the more humans and the more people that we have educated on this stuff, the less damaging effect we have. When we have Internet of Things boxes in our houses that are vulnerable and fall over and they get owned, they become part of a DOS attack network. And so we got to train people to understand what's vulnerable and how to upgrade firmware and how to use the latest updates and patches and things like that. So I think while we've got this focused audience of people who are sitting behind the screen looking for stuff, it's a good time to train and educate and point them into the right direction on some of this stuff at the training level that they're at. I also think there's going to be more focus over the next year, if we're going to be working for the next 6 to 12 months at home, on mental health. And I don't mean in a cheesy way. I think there's going to be more organized events for remote workers. How are you getting on today? Let's get together in a Zoom chat. Let's spend an hour. Maybe it'd be like having a remote meal together, or drinking. And I think that will switch a lot of these companies on to having that element as part of their social media and their business. If they've been struggling before to make content for their company because they don't feel like they're a very social media interesting company, maybe that will change once they start chatting to each other via video. And also finally, investors in the infrastructure. If there's one thing that blockchain has taught me over the last 2 or 3 years, is invest in the tools that you use. And while I couldn't afford to do that, moving forward over the next year, I feel like I'm going to spend a lot more money on digital services. I'm already spending quite a bit of money per month on digital access, on VPNs, things like that. I think that's going to explode in terms of the amount of money that's being spent on those things. And I think people are going to look for different kinds of investment. I know some people will probably say, well, Bitcoin's the way for hard money, invest in hard money, it's the best interest rates you can get, and yada yada. But I also think there's blockchain infrastructure out there that still needs servers to run. Being able to add your own nodes to that if you're using that, I think that all contributes to the costs of this stuff, right? So finding your little tribes around the web, and it doesn't necessarily matter, I don't think, for which blockchain project that is. If it gives you value and you can add value back, then there's a nice little exchange going on there. But I also think that we're going to end up with a whole new class of investors when it comes to digital. All right, I'm going to get back into my core stuff, but I will catch up with you either tomorrow or on Wednesday. You have a great day. See you soon.